I am struck by the beauty of our lives, the magnificence, the wonder, the awe. And I was sharing at the earlier service that at the time I came into this teaching, it was in the mid-'80s, and there was a mindset at the time, and it was all about prosperity, i.e. money, really more about money than prosperity, as we know there's a difference. And it was there was very much an attitude of, if you are doing this right, your consciousness is evolved, then you are in loving relationship, you're tall, you're handsome, you're rich, you're dressed well, and you're probably driving a BMW. Rich earlier was like there, but no BMW. So he still has work to do before he evolves to that next level of being. But there was very much, at least the take on it at that time, was very much about the inner spiritual life manifested in perfect form into being. So what I discovered about that was that when people's lives weren't tall, they weren't rich, they weren't happily married or whatever, then they tended to go away because the message was sort of like, you're doing it wrong. And I'm happy and grateful that we have evolved beyond that consciousness that simply begins to love and see and appreciate the divine in all things. To see that it is, while it's wonderful to experience abundance and experience joy and experience the light, what I find for myself is very often the growth happens in the darkness. It happens in the emptiness. It happens in the non-fulfillment so that we spiritually grow and evolve to a place where a greater good can then be revealed. And so every Sunday we make it a point to say we celebrate all the seasons of our lives, the times of joy, the times of sorrow. And it's a profound step forward. I've been going through some changes in my life, and I'm allowing myself to experience the emptiness that comes with change. And I've been just picking up things and reading things, and I'm going to do something today I don't normally do, but I'm going to call it a Thanksgiving story. And so I will read to you. I love this particular passage. And it's from a book called Grace Notes by Brian Doyle. It's a little bit long, but I'm going to read to you, hence the glasses, because apparently they're making print smaller these days. Well, maybe I'm not going to read this to you. It speaks to, note to self, put the page mark back in after you read the first time. Oh, so this is us practicing being authentic together. Just as an aside, Debbie Thompson, where are you? Here. Please stand. Almost 4 years ago, I got a call from a certain woman, Debbie Thompson, to say, we're going through some difficult times. Would you come down and talk to us? Or can we talk? And I said, I'll come down, we'll talk. A little did I know they would lock me in a room and not let me leave until I signed some kind of a contract. So if it ever goes bad, blame her. Thank you, my dear. I love you. I'm so grateful you're here with us. So this is a writing. As I said, Brian Doyle does these wonderful little passages about life. He's completely politically incorrect, so I just want to go into it knowing that. Love that about him. It's nice to know I'm not the only one. And this is called On Miraculousness. A while ago, I was shuffling along the roaring shore of the mist-named Pacific Ocean, humming to myself, pondering this and that and the other, when I saw a crippled kid hopping towards me. She was maybe 4 years old, and her feet were bent so sideways that her toes faced each other, so she scuttled rather than walked. I never saw a kid crippled quite like that before. I thought for a minute she was alone, but then I noticed the rest of her clan, a big guy, and two other small girls, probably the dad and sisters, walking way ahead of the crippled kid. The crippled kid was cheerful as a bird, and she zoomed along awfully fast on those sideways feet. She was totally absorbed in the sea wreck of the high tide line, shards of crab and acres of sand fleas and shreds of seaweed and ropes of bullwhip kelp and fractions of jellyfish and here and there a deceased perch and a once serious-sized form of fish that looked like it might have been a salmon. In the way of all people for 1,000,000 years along all shores, she stared and poked and prodded and bent and pocketed and discarded, pawing through the loot and the litter of the merciless, musing sea. She was so into checking out tide treasure that her dad and sisters got way ahead of her, and after a while the dad turned and whistled, and the crippled kid looked up and laughed and took off, hopping faster than you could ever imagine a kid that crippled could hop. And when she was a few feet away from the dad, he crouched a little and extended his arm behind him with his hand out to receive her foot. And she shimmied up his arm, as graceful and as quick as anything you ever saw. And she slid into what must have been her usual seat on his neck, and off they went. The sisters pissing and moaning about having to wait for the crippled kid, and the dad tickling the bottoms of the kid's feet, so that I heard the kid laughing fainter and fainter as they receded, until finally I couldn't hear her laughing anymore. But right about then I was weeping, like a child anyways, at the intricate and astounding, unimaginable, inexplicable, complex thicket of love and pain and suffering and joy. At the way that kid rocketed up her daddy's arm quick as a cat. At the way he crouched just so and opened his palms to the baby girl so the baby girl could come flying up his holy branch of his arm. At the way her hands knew where to wrap themselves around his grin. At the way sisters were all snarling about the very same kid's sister, that if anyone else ever grumbled about her, they would pound him silly. And this is all, not even to mention the glory of the sunlight that day, and the basso moon of the mother sea, and the deft diving of the little black sea ducks in the surf, and the seal popping up here and there, looking eagerly like my grandfather, and the eagle who flew over like a black tent, heading north, and the extraordinary fact that the coherent mercy granted me on my own kids, who were not crippled, and were at the exact moment arguing shrilly about baseball at the other end of the beach. I finally got a grip and set to shuffling again, but that kid stays with me. Something about her, the way she was a verb, the way she was happy even with the dark cards she was dealt, the way she loved openly and artlessly, the way even her sisters couldn't stay mad but had to smile when she shimmied up their daddy's arm, seems utterly holy to me, a gift, a sign, a reminder, a letter from the light. In my Father's house there are many mansions, said the thin, confusing rabbi long ago, a line I've always puzzled over. Yet another of the many Zen koans. But I think I finally have a handle on that one. What he meant. Did Yeshua ben Joseph of the Haunting Life and Message is that we are given gifts beyond measure, beyond price, beyond understanding, and they mill and swirl by us all day and all night. And we have but to see them clearly for a second, to believe wholly in the bounty and generosity and mercy of the I am who I am. I am not stupid all the time. And I saw how crippled that kid was, and I can only imagine her life to date and to come, and the tensions and travails of her family, and the battles she will fight, and the tears she will shed. And I see and hear the roar of pain and suffering in the world, the floods and rapes and starvings and bullets. And I am too old and too honest not to admit how murderous and greedy we can be. But I have also seen too many kids who are verbs not to believe we swim in an ocean of holy. I have seen too many men and women and children of such grace and humor and mercy that I know I have seen the holy thing 10 times a day. I think maybe you know that too, and we just don't talk about it much because we are tired and scared, and the light flits in and around so much darkness. But there was a crippled kid on the beach, and the holy thing in her came pouring out her eyes, and I forgot it, and I don't forget it. In my Father's house, there are many mansions, said the skinny Jewish guy, confusingly. And then, in his usual testy editorial way, if it were not so, I would have told you. And then, in a phrase I lean on when things go dark, I go to prepare a place for you. But we are already in the doorway of that house, don't you think? So my Thanksgiving message for you is that we are in the doorway of that house. We, through our minds, sometimes want to judge reality. We want to label good and label bad. We want to label positive and we want to label negative. And for those who are willing to open to a spiritual dimension of who they are, that the masters spoke of throughout the ages, begin to realize that it is all the holy thing. It is all the sacred space. And when we have that awareness and understanding, we can walk in grace. I was so touched by that email that Linda shared about the simple act of a meal for a family in crisis, and how they saw angels in the midst of a simple act of kindness. Certainly, as we move into this Thanksgiving season, we have much to be grateful for. As a community, we have come together around a common purpose and created a beautiful space where we can celebrate and have messy Thanksgiving dinners and do all the things that families do together, where we can fight and argue and love and share in the joy of being human and divine. But I'm mindful and profoundly aware that it is we, the community, that created the space and not the space that created the community. I was sharing earlier that I always get these little things on the minister's listserv, and one of the things they put out is open pulpits. And the open pulpits are positions that are open for ministers. And while I have no intention of going anywhere, it's taken me 4 years to just get you kind of settled down here. You know, but I am kind of nosy, and so I like to see what else is going on. And I was sort of struck by a particular one, and in essence, what they put forth, one, they need a good marketing director, but what they put forth is, we are a community that has a really lovely facility and we are dying. Won't you come save us, is what I read into the message. I don't know that that's exactly what they said, but you know, I've done this for a while. And having done that from time to time, recognized the call. And I just contrasted that with, I didn't judge. Just want you to know I was not judging. I was just discerning differences. And it just made my heart sing that we are a community that is a community first and foremost. And out of the wisdom and insight and beauty and wonder of who we are, we've created a space in which we can play. And to me, that speaks volumes to who we are. That we don't identify ourselves as the minister. We don't identify ourselves as the place, but we identify ourselves as a spiritual community, having a joyous, loving, wonderful experience, embracing the fullness of life. And so how wonderful to announce how well we did with our estimated giving program. How does that sound to you, Debbie, by the way? Much better than what you left? Uh-huh. Me too. That's why I said, now they've got my salary covered, so I don't know what they're going to, where the rest of the money is going to come from, but it's all good. I'm kidding, in case you hadn't figured that out. And how wonderful to welcome these new people that are saying, yes, I want to be a part of that. And how wonderful that we get to come together and have a meal together in our own place. And how wonderful that we're excited about our future. And I know that even in the midst of all the joy and the wonder, some of you cried yourself to sleep last night. Perhaps this is a first Thanksgiving without a loved one. Perhaps it's the other part of life. And what I want to say today is, can we see the sacred in all of it? Can we allow ourselves to be so spiritually imbued that we can be completely humanly available for the fullness of this lifetime? The good and the bad is only what we assign the good and the bad. There is a place and an awareness and an understanding that when we walk in grace, when we walk with the awareness and the understanding of this one life, the divine life of which we are an integral part, then even in the midst of what appears darkness, there are always shards of light. I know that we love the light more. We'd all rather just bask in the light. But it is also true that the growth happens in the darkness. The unfoldment happens in the darkness. And so as you move through this Thanksgiving season, I want to invite you to embrace that passage from the Bible that says, in all things, give thanks. The emphasis being on the word all. Because for most of us, we're good with about 90% of it. Right? All right, can I 94? I'll go to 94%, but really all of it? And yet there's a wonderful thing that comes with wisdom, that comes with understanding, and we truly can begin to view and understand our lives, that the fullness of it, the hard places make us strong, the dark places give us insight, as well as the joy of simply being in the light. So I want to express my gratitude. I am truly blessed to serve as your minister. I'm truly blessed to be a part of this community. And I just want you to know, wherever you are on that journey, you are loved and supported in being fully who you are. Let us pray. As we turn inward, sensing and feeling and breathing into that awareness of the one life always present, always available, sensing and feeling and breathing into that presence of unconditional love. Sensing and feeling and breathing into the presence of divine wisdom. We are reminded of our true and sacred nature. That we are not separate from the divine, but we are the extension of the divine. And as we take on that mantle, we walk through the world filled with grace, filled with love, filled with peace. We make welcome into our lives our greater good. We make welcome the presence of wholeness, the presence of love, the presence of abundance and joy. And it is with a grateful heart that we embrace the entirety of our lives, the fullness of being. We recognize everything and everyone as gifts of the divine. We allow ourselves to be transcended, to be renewed through our spiritual understanding. And so I bless this community. I bless each person here. How grateful we are to be together at this time, in this place, to experience that greater possibility, that holy thing. And so we extend a blessing from this place. We bless this community. We know that we are divinely guided, that we are divinely unfolding to be a presence of love and peace and harmony in the world. And we extend a blessing to our brothers and sisters around the planet. We're simply holding the high vision for a planet at peace, for a world that works for everyone. And as always, we bless all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of every faith. For we recognize the many sacred paths that lead to a greater understanding of our true and divine nature. And so we bless them and name them good. And so it is with a sense of joy and gratitude then that I simply give thanks. I give thanks for the many blessings in our lives, for the material and the spiritual blessings. And I give thanks for the consciousness established here and the law of mind that unfolds according to this consciousness established. In joy and gratitude, then I simply release this word into the law, knowing that it is done for the highest good of all. And so with joy and gratitude, I simply allow it to be so. As together we say, and so it is.